Today, we're going beyond just concrete and steel. We're talking about the digital blueprint of infrastructure, how it's built and how it's managed throughout its entire lifespan.
Essentially, we're going to be examining the business case for building information modeling for you, or BIM for short, and how it can be utilized by transportation agencies across the U.S.
That's right. And to help us along the way, we'll be referencing the 2023 research report from the Transportation Research Board titled Lifecycle BIM for Infrastructure, a business case for project delivery and asset management.
Sounds like a fascinating report.
Oh, it is. In this deep dive, we'll be exploring some really interesting questions like, can BIM really save time and money on these projects? What are some surprising ways BIM is being used in the real world? And how can BIM assist with things like preventing accidental utility strikes?
I'm already intrigued.
Me too.
There.
I'm sure you're already wondering. So let's unpack what exactly BIM is and why it should matter to you.
Okay, think of BIM as a dynamic 3D model containing all the information you could possibly need about an asset.
Oh, wow.
So this could be anything from the design and the materials used all the way to its maintenance history.
So it's like a digital twin for a bridge or a highway.
Exactly. Or even an entire airport for that matter.
That's amazing.
Now you might be thinking, okay, but why should I care? Well, BIM offers a ton of potential benefits. With proper project planning and design, you'll see fewer errors, less rework, and potentially even lower costs.
Fewer errors and lower costs. Who doesn't love that?
If we take a closer look at asset management, with BIM, you have a central repository of information for every little detail imaginable.
Like, what kind of details are we talking about here?
Well, this means maintenance crews can easily access repair histories, figure out exactly where a problem is, and even order replacement parts with just a few clicks.
Wow, that sounds incredibly efficient.
Right? That can save you a lot of time and money.
Makes sense.
And perhaps more importantly, keep that infrastructure safe.
So BIM is almost like having this super detailed instruction manual that's constantly updated. I'm definitely seeing the appeal here. Can you give us a real-world example of how a project team might use this?
Absolutely. Just imagine a team being able to virtually, like walk through a bridge before it's even built.
Oh, that's interesting.
This allows them to easily spot potential clashes between pipes and beams.
Oh, I see.
Or even identify ways to optimize traffic flow. That's one of the really neat things about BIM.
Improved planning and design that leads to fewer surprises during construction. I can already see how that would be a benefit for me. What else should I be excited about?
Another benefit that really stands out is enhanced collaboration. So everyone involved in a project, from the architects to the engineers to the contractors, can all work off of the same up-to-date BIM model.
I see.
That streamlines communication, reduces misunderstandings, and promotes a more integrated approach overall.
So BIM isn't just a way to build things better, it's also a way to get everyone working together more effectively. Sounds like it ticks a lot of boxes. I'm curious though, does it really live up to all the hype?
Yo.
Can you tell us more about the business case for BIM
Yeah.
and how it's been shown to pay off in the real world?
That's where this Transportation Research Board report becomes especially interesting. It actually examines the costs and benefits of adopting BIM through an ROI tool.
Okay.
The results are pretty compelling, and they demonstrate that agencies have a significant opportunity to improve lifecycle asset management, leading to both cost savings and gains in efficiency.
So BIM is not just a shiny new tech toy, it actually makes financial sense. This is getting better all the time. I'm curious about what kind of cost savings we're looking at here.
Yeah.
Did the report delve into any specifics?
One of the biggest benefits identified in the report was cost savings from avoiding change orders. You know those expensive modifications that always seem to pop up during construction?
Ugh, yes. Tell me about it.
Because of a design flaw or just an unforeseen clash?
Yeah.
With BIM, you're catching a lot of those issues early, virtually, so they don't end up becoming real-world budget busters.
That makes a lot of sense. Fewer surprises during construction is going to be a win for everyone involved. Did the report offer any real-world examples of this in action?
It did. In fact, it's packed with anecdotes from real projects.
Awesome.
For example, one team working on a viaduct, that's a long elevated bridge, for anyone who doesn't know, was able to use their 3D model to identify a completely different construction method that ended up saving them both time and money. It's a classic, aha moment made possible by BIM.
I am sold. It's clear that BIM has a lot of potential and is far more than just hype. But I bet our listener is itching to hear how this all plays out in practice. What are some real-world examples of BIM in action? Where should we take them first on our BIM road trip?
Let's head to the East Coast and take a look at the Kew Gardens Interchange Program,
Oh, okay.
a project tackled by the New York State DOT. This is a massive and complex intersection,
Whoa!
handling an enormous volume of traffic,
How much traffic are we talking?
almost 600,000 vehicles daily.
Wow, that's almost too many cars to even imagine. I can only imagine the logistical challenges they must have faced. How did BIM help them tame this traffic beast?
To begin with, BIM helped optimize the design of the interchange. The project involved widening the expressways, reconstructing bridges, and even relocating subway entrances.
Wow.
Trying to accomplish that without BIM would have been a logistical nightmare.
I bet BIM helped bring some order to that potential chaos. Can you elaborate on what they did?
So the 3D models allowed the team to visualize the entire project, identify potential conflicts, and even explore different options for how they wanted to sequence the construction.
Okay.
This led to fewer errors, better collaboration between the different teams involved, and a smoother construction process overall.
I can definitely see how using BIM would be a game changer, especially on a project of that scale and complexity. Let's continue west for our next stop. Where to now?
Let's head over to Utah, where the Utah DOT has been a pioneer in using BIM for something called model-based contracts.
Model-based contracts. What is that?
Essentially, the 3D model itself becomes the legal contract document.
Hold on, the model is the contract. That's a pretty bold move. How did that work out for them? Were there any challenges?
It's definitely been a journey for them. They started with smaller, simpler projects to test the waters and gradually scaled up to more complex ones.
Okay.
While they certainly faced some challenges along the way, the results have been impressive.
Can you give us some more insight into the results?
They've seen some significant reductions in project durations.
Oh, really?
In fact, one of their early pilot projects finished an incredible 25% ahead of schedule thanks to BIM and the model-based contracting approach.
That's an amazing time save. I'm sure that had a positive impact on the budget as well.
Absolutely. Time is money, as they say. They've also noticed that using BIM leads to higher quality designs, fewer of those pesky change orders, and better communication overall.
Okay, so New York used BIM for design optimization and collaboration, and Utah pushed the envelope with model-based contracts. What's next on our BIM road trip?
Let's stick with the Mountain Time Zone and head on over to Colorado. The Colorado DOT used BIM for a project called the I-70G Edwards Spur Road Improvement. This project involved converting a busy intersection into a roundabout, replacing and widening bridges, and improving pedestrian safety.
That sounds like a pretty standard road improvement project. What made this project unique, and why did they choose to use BIM?
Well, BIM was still relatively new to CDOT,
Okay.
so they decided to utilize it as a risk mitigation strategy. They decided to model much more than they normally would have, including things like subsurface utilities and drainage systems.
So they were being extra thorough with their 3D modeling. What did all that extra effort get them? What benefits did they reap?
It gave them the ability to analyze safety sight lines in a far more sophisticated way.
Oh,
For example, they were able to use the model to optimize the placement of road signs and ensure there was clear visibility for drivers.
so they're making the roads safer by using BIM to see things that might have been missed with more traditional methods?
That's right. They also used BIM to enhance pedestrian safety by incorporating a separate pedestrian bridge into the design. The 3D model helped them visualize how the bridge would fit into the overall project and ensure that it met all the accessibility requirements.
So BIM isn't just about efficiency and cost savings, it's also about safety for everyone who will be using the infrastructure, both drivers and pedestrians.
That's a great point and something I hadn't considered.
Yeah.
Okay, we've seen how BIM is being implemented in New York, Utah, and Colorado. I'm ready to go international now. How about you?
I think our listener deserves a bit of a break from all this stateside travel. Let's save the international BIM adventures for part 2 of our deep dive.
Sounds good to me. We'll give everyone a chance to catch their breath, grab a snack, and get ready for more BIM insights. See you back here soon for part 2.
Welcome back to the deep dive. I hope you grabbed your passport and are ready to continue our BIM adventure because we're going international.
That's right. Now that we've seen how BIM is transforming infrastructure in the U.S., let's see how it's being used across the globe. Maybe we can even pick up some inspiration for projects back home.
I'm all for that. Where are we headed first?
Let's start by flying over to Denver International Airport,
Again?
but not the one in Colorado.
Oh, okay.
This time we're focusing on how DEN is utilizing BIM for facility management in a really innovative way.
Facility management.
Uh-huh.
So we're not just talking about building the airport, but keeping everything running smoothly once passengers are arriving and planes are taking off.
Precisely. Den has been using BIM to manage a wide range of airport operations, from the HVAC systems and lighting to security protocols and even janitorial services. They have a 3D model of the entire airport and it's linked to their asset management database.
Wait, so if a light bulb goes out in Concourse C, they can pinpoint its exact location on the model.
Exactly.
No more airport employees wandering around with a ladder and a box of bulbs.
Exactly. And they could also see when it was last replaced, what type of bulb it is, and even who the supplier is.
That's impressive.
Right.
Very organized.
That's some serious attention to detail, and it's all thanks to BIM. This level of information makes maintenance incredibly efficient.
Wow, it's like they've given the entire airport a digital checkup. So beyond just making things easier to find, what kind of impact has this had on DIN overall?
They've seen significant time and cost savings. For example, in the past, they used to spend hours tracking down information about specific assets. Now with BIM, it's all right there at their fingertips.
That makes a lot of sense.
That's not all, though. They've also been able to streamline their maintenance workflows,
I see.
which has freed up staff to focus on more strategic tasks.
So BIM is making things easier for passengers and ND for airport employees. I love it. Okay, so far our BIM journey has taken us from coast to coast in the US and now to a busy international airport. Where to next?
Let's hop across the Atlantic to the UK. Highways England, the agency responsible for the country's motorways, has been a leader in BIM adoption for quite some time now.
I've heard the UK is way ahead of the US when it comes to BIM. What have they been doing differently over there? Are there any key takeaways we can learn from them?
Well, one major difference is they've had a national BIM mandate in place for public projects since 2011.
Oh, wow.
This has really driven adoption across the entire industry. But they're not just checking boxes. They've been using BIM to tackle some really complex challenges.
Like what? Give us an example of a project that really showcases the UK's approach to BIM.
One great example is the A556 dual carriageway project. It involved widening a busy 7.6-kilometer stretch of highway, building new bridges and refurbishing existing ones. And they use something called a design-build delivery method,
Design build.
which is known for being fast-tracked and emphasizing collaboration. BIM was a crucial part of their success.
Fast track schedule, that sounds pretty intense. How did BIM help them keep this complex project on track?
For starters, it significantly improved communication and coordination between the design and construction teams. They used the 3D model to identify any potential clashes, optimize the construction sequencing, and even create virtual simulations of the entire construction process.
So they could basically hit play on the model and watch the entire construction project unfold before their eyes. That's next level planning.
Exactly. This allowed them to identify potential bottlenecks, refine their logistics, and make sure that everything went smoothly on site.
Talk about minimizing surprises. I bet that saved them a ton of time, money, and headaches.
It did. The project was completed on time and within budget, which is a remarkable achievement for a project of that scale and complexity. But that's not all. They were also able to do some truly innovative things with BIM when it came to safety.
Oh, tell me more about that. What kind of safety analyses did they do using BIM?
They simulated traffic flow on the new highway and identified potential safety hazards before the road was even open to the public.
Virtual test drives to make the real roads safer. That's incredibly clever.
They even used BIM to determine the most effective placement of those variable message signs you see along the highway. By simulating different scenarios, they were able to figure out the best locations for the signs to ensure drivers had enough time to react to changing conditions.
It sounds like they used BIM to make the roads smarter and safer even before the first car drove on it. That's a fantastic use case.
And the results speak for themselves. Since it opened, there's been a significant reduction in accidents and incidents on the A556.
So BIM isn't just a tool for architects and engineers. It's also making a tangible difference in people's lives by making their commutes safer. Okay, so we've seen how BIM is being used to manage airports, build highways, and even make roads safer. Are there any other global BIM adventures we should explore?
I think it's time we head back to the U.S. While these international projects offer valuable insights, the research report also delves into some of the challenges agencies face when adopting BIM, and that's something we should discuss.
That's a great point. It's easy to get swept up in all the exciting possibilities, but there are always hurdles to overcome when implementing new technologies. What are some of the biggest challenges that transportation agencies in the U.S. are grappling with when it comes to BIM?
One of the biggest challenges is simply resistance to change. Many agencies have been doing things the same way for decades, and it can be tough to get everyone on board with a new approach,
I could see that.
especially one that seems as radical as BIM.
That's understandable. People can be creatures of habit, but surely there are ways to overcome this inertia.
Absolutely. Strong leadership is key. Having a BIM champion within the agency, someone who can really advocate for its benefits and guide the implementation process, can make all the difference.
So it's not just about having the technology, but also having the right people in place to drive the adoption of BIM.
Exactly. And then there's the issue of standardization. BIM is still a relatively young field, and there aren't always clear guidelines or best practices for how to implement it. This lack of standardization can lead to inconsistencies between projects and make it difficult to share data effectively.
It sounds a bit like a Wild West situation. What's being done to bring some order to the BIM frontier and establish some consistent guidelines?
Well, thankfully, there are a number of organizations working to develop BIM standards. Some of the key players are Building Smart International and the U.S. National BIM Standard.
That's good to hear. Hopefully, we'll see more consistency and interoperability in the future as these standards become more widely adopted. What other challenges do agencies need to be aware of?
Another important one is the need for training and education. Agencies need to invest in upskilling their workforce to ensure that everyone has the knowledge and skills to effectively utilize BIM.
That makes perfect sense. You can't just hand someone a sophisticated 3D modeling software and expect them to work miracles. BIM is a powerful tool, but its effectiveness depends on the skills of the people using it.
Exactly. And this training needs to go beyond just the technical aspects of using the software. People need to understand the BIM process, the collaborative workflows, and how to leverage BIM data for decision-making.
So while there are definitely challenges to overcome, it seems like there's also a lot of momentum behind BIM adoption. The research report even highlights some pretty exciting opportunities for the future of BIM. Are there any that stand out to you?
Absolutely. One area with huge potential is using BIM to improve infrastructure resilience, making our roads, bridges, and other critical assets better equipped to withstand natural disasters and the growing impacts of climate change.
That's a critical issue, especially given the increasing frequency and severity of extreme weather events. How can BIM contribute to building more resilient infrastructure?
BIM enables us to simulate different scenarios and test the structural integrity of designs under a variety of conditions, including extreme weather events.
That's great.
This allows us to identify vulnerabilities and make design changes that will improve the resilience of the infrastructure.
So we can essentially use BIM to future-proof our infrastructure. I'm really liking this idea. What other opportunities does the report highlight?
Another exciting area is using BIM to improve infrastructure sustainability. BIM helps us track the embodied carbon in construction materials and optimize designs to reduce waste. It can even be used to assess the environmental impact of different design alternatives.
So BIM isn't just about bricks and mortar, it's about building a more sustainable future.
Exactly. It's about using technology to create a better world for everyone.
Okay, I'm inspired. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from practical examples to future possibilities, but I bet our listener is wondering what this all means for them on a practical level. Let's wrap up this part of our deep dive with some key takeaways.
Great idea. So, listener, here's what you need to know about BIM for infrastructure.
All right, let's hear those key takeaways. What do you think is most important for our listener to remember?
Well, first, BIM offers significant potential for improving infrastructure projects, but it requires careful planning and implementation. It's not a magic bullet that you can just plug and play.
Right.
You're going to need commitment, investment, and a willingness to embrace new ways of working.
So no cutting corners. BIM is a journey, not a destination. What else should our listener keep in mind?
The second takeaway is that investing in BIM can lead to, cost savings, time savings, improved safety, and better collaboration.
Yeah.
We've seen this play out in all the real-world examples we've talked about, from the Kew Gardens interchange in New York to the A556 dual carriageway in the UK. Agencies are seeing real, tangible benefits from BIM.
So it seems like BIM is good for the bottom line and good for the world. What's the third key takeaway?
Finally, it's important to remember that transportation agencies are still in the early stages of BIM adoption. There's a huge opportunity for future research and development. We need to keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with BIM, exploring new use cases, developing better standards, and creating more robust data collection practices.
Seems like exciting times ahead for BIM enthusiasts. I have to say, I'm thoroughly impressed with the potential of BIM. It's clear that this isn't just a passing fad, but a fundamental shift in how we approach infrastructure. What are your thoughts on that?
I absolutely agree. BIM represents a paradigm shift in how we think about the entire life cycle of infrastructure assets.
Hmm.
From the initial planning and design phases all the way to construction and ongoing operations.
Yeah.
BIM has the power to make our infrastructure more efficient, resilient, sustainable, and ultimately more valuable to society.
Well said.
Like,
Okay, listener, before we wrap up our deep dive into the world of BIM, we want to leave you with one final thought, something to ponder as you go about your day.
okay,
Imagine a future where all infrastructure projects are designed, built, and managed using BIM.
it's an interesting thought.
A future where bridges can talk to maintenance crews, alerting them to potential problems before they become critical, or where roads can optimize traffic flow in real time, reducing congestion and emissions.
That would be incredible.
A future where infrastructure isn't just concrete and steel, but a living, breathing, intelligent system that we can interact with in ways we're only just beginning to imagine.
A very Jetsons-esque future.
It's a bold vision, but with the power of BIM, it's becoming more achievable every day.
Definitely.
If you're interested in learning more about this game-changing technology, we encourage you to check out the full Transportation Research Board report for yourself. It's packed with insightful information and inspiring examples. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time when we'll be exploring another fascinating topic. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.